Dick Cheney. Man, I'm reading stuff over the weekend. This guy is such a force of evil in this country. I can't begin to describe it. I've been trying to describe it to you for the last 5 years. Haven't been successful yet. Because people don't get it. They just, like, the American people have no idea how truly dark Dick Cheney is. And I'm not sure we've had a force inside the American government as dark as Dick Cheney. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. Okay? Every single terrible thing that has happened leads back to him.
Yeah.
And whether it ranges from terrible ideas with disastrous consequences to things that are truly immoral.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you a range of things. One of the things I discovered over the weekend was that Lawrence Wilkerson, former chief of staff to Colin Powell when he was the Secretary of State, told reporters, by the way, Cheney and his buddies, they tried to start a war with China before we had the whole 9/11 and the Iraq and stuff. And then it was confirmed by the pretty much our ambassador to Taiwan. I say pretty much because the ambassador position to Taiwan is a complicated situation. But the person who represents us in Taiwan said, yeah, Wilkerson is right. That's what they tried to do. Okay, get a load of this. Here's what Rumsfeld and Cheney would constantly send people over to Taiwan to encourage the independence movement. Now, China has said if Taiwan declares its independence, there will be a military strike, and we'll go and take it over, right? So our official policy, the U.S. policy, since Nixon went over, is don't do that, okay? We don't encourage independence at all. We have a murky, confusing, on purpose policy so that it seems like, hey, we're kind of supporting Taiwan, but we're not pissing off China. It's called diplomacy. Mm-hmm. And a Republican president did it, Richard Nixon. And all the Democratic and Republican presidents have maintained it. And it turns out so did George W. Bush, and that's an interesting twist in the story, okay? So pretty much every month, these guys said, Wilkerson and the ambassadors say, Rumsfeld would send somebody else, or the neocons would sell somebody else to tell the Taiwanese, hey, come on, go independent, right? And then Colin Powell would find out about it, and the very next day he'd send somebody else over saying, don't do it. Don't do it. We're not going to support you. You're going to get your ass kicked. And these guys don't know what they're talking about, and they don't represent the United States. I'm telling you, as the State Department, don't do it. It's a terrible idea. So they kept sending these mixed signals, and then finally Powell had to call in Bush as the ref and say, hey, can you get Rumsfeld and Cheney to stop trying to start a war with a nuclear power, China? Do I have to tell you what a terrible idea that is? Because, of course, if they declare independence and China follows through it, which, they'd been signaling in that direction anyway, and they hit Taiwan, then we got to protect Taiwan. And then we're drawn into a conflict with a nuclear power. It's madness.
Or we don't protect Taiwan.
Or we don't protect Taiwan, and Taiwan gets
Taiwan gets obliterated.
Right. I mean, how many people die, and then the country becomes communist, and and gets taken over by China? I mean, the consequences are hideous in any way you look at it.
Price of electronics goes up. A lot of downside.
So, more or less gay kissing at Chinese weddings. I don't know how that breaks out. But anyway, so finally Bush stepped in, and here, look at this. And Bush was the reasonable one. He told Rumsfeld, stop it. Stop sending people over to Taiwan trying to encourage a nuclear war with China.
Yeah, obviously we know that when it suits his father, he goes against his father, George, the current president. Mm-hmm. His father was president before him. I don't know whether you knew that. Not that long before him. That's what's amazing. Also, that blew me away. That's why I didn't think he could win in 2000, or could win. Of course, he could win. Why I didn't think he would win in 2000? Because it wasn't like his father was president 25 years ago, which seems an appropriate amount of time before a son takes over. It turns out it's never appropriate now. But it was 8 years. Like his dad had been in office 8 years earlier. Like, it just seemed weird.
Nah, the cult of celebrity has taken over America. We've talked about it before. I mean, Paris Hilton will be president soon. You can't, if you're going to run for president, you have to be really, 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 really famous. So if your name isn't Hillary, it isn't Clinton or Bush, your chance of winning is immediately knocked down by 25 to 50%.
But George H.W. Bush was, of course, ambassador to China. It wasn't really ambassador because we didn't really have an ambassador, but he was, in fact, the ambassador to China. And of course, the younger Bush didn't go over there because, actually, I think he did go over there.
I don't know. I know that Neil Bush went over there and visited hookers.
Sure, he cashed in on.
That's literally true, by the way.
But for 2 years, I mean, during the Ford administration, that's what George H.W. Bush did. I think that actually might have been one of the places where George W. Bush went.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I mean, and I'm sure George H.W. Bush was like, no, the war's a bad idea with China.
Of course, but who would think it's a good idea outside of these insane people? Who thinks a war with China is a good idea?